to the IAM Winter Solstice Symposium.
Feel the wind inside of you. Feel the wind of your spirit. In Southern Africa, we talk about umoya. Njani umoya wako? How is the wind inside of you? For us, the wind also represents the spirit, the soul. To connect with the wind inside of you means to connect with your soul, your very essence, that part of you which is connected to the dream time, that part of you which is connected to your immortality. Uyiva umoya wako. Feel the wind inside of you. Feel your spirit and your soul stir. I'd like to do a little guided meditation to connect to the wind inside of you, but also to connect to your inner fire. Your inner fire and the wind are connected because there needs to be combustion. There needs to be fire in order for there to be passion. And when there's passion, there's also compassion. So we light the fire inside of us through feeling our wind and then feeling our angumoya, the wind rising inside of us. So wherever you are, I invite you to sit up straight. I invite you to feel your heartbeat, which is the fire inside of you. So here we go. Feel your spirit, feel your spine. Put your hand on your heart. Feel the pulse of your heartbeat and know that the pulse of your own heartbeat is the connection you have to the fire inside of you. Breathe in. Allow the wind inside of you to ignite your own heartbeat. When there's ignition, there's combustion. When there's combustion, there's passion. When there's passion, there's compassion. And what this world needs more than anything else is more compassion. But to do that, we have to be passionate human beings. So mindfully, in a concentrated, focused way, I invite you to feel your own heartbeat. Breathe in. Breathe in the wind inside of you. Breathe it in directly to your own heartbeat. And notice something. Notice how you breathe in consciously to the beating heart inside of you. Your heart pulse becomes stronger, more vibrant. It becomes more alive. It becomes more passionate. Breathe in. Breathe in the wind of the world. Breathe in the wind of spirit. Breathe it directly into your own life force. That electrical pulse of fire inside of you, which is your heartbeat. And now, in my tradition, I'm going to sing in the Xhosa and in Nguni language. I'm going to invite in the wisdom keepers of our humanity, our ancestors. Siango amanyange amanyange. Siango amanyange amanyange. Siango amanyange amanyange. Amanyange amanyange. Amanyange amanyange. Hey, amanyangi, hey, amanyangi, hey, amanyangi. Feel your spirit. Listen to the wind inside of you. How is the wind calling you right now? How is your spirit calling you into the world? Sidiqamaku siyanqula siyathandaza camaku abantu badala. Siyanqula Thixo neqamata sidiqamaku Nkosi yami. So we say, we honor and praise the Great Spirit. We honor and praise our ancestors. We honor and praise the wisdom keepers before us. And we say to them, please, uvulunlela amanyange abazali bam, uvulunlela. We say, please open the road, great ones. Open the road, our ancestors. Open the road, our parents, so that we can realize our humanity and the gift of being human in this world and the next. And the job of waking up as a human being is the job of learning to become a custodian of this world. How can we help this world? So I pray that you can feel your spirit and that you can listen to your spirit, and your spirit can guide you into the world, can guide you in how to be a human being with 2 hands, 2 feet, and a voice, and how to help this world.
Well, now that's the way to start out a conversation. I love it. Thank you. For those of you who are joining us today, I have the privilege and the honor of visiting with John Lockley, one of the first modern white men in recent history to become a fully initiated Kosa?
Kosa, yeah, Kosa.
Kosa, I got it. Medicine man. I'm not going to even try the other words, but we're going to have a conversation today about, well, we found out pre-hit the record button that we have a lot in common about spreading and connecting, and I just have been to your tradition so much, so I'm really excited to be sitting here with you and maybe even have a bone reading. I've never had a bone reading. I've always wanted one, and the heart that you already just offered us, sign me up. So he has a book by Sounds True called The Leopard Warrior, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I let him know that there's a group of a few hundred fire tenders holding space for their altar for this period in the north, which is the winter solstice, and he happens to be in the south, where they don't really celebrate the solstices per se, or they're certainly not celebrating the winter solstice. But so I'm here. We were here to learn about what you want to teach us.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here today. So thanks for inviting me, Renee.
Well, it turns out that he was just telling me, and I since we have a group of wind believers here, that he just introduced the wind into this meditation. But tell us a little bit about how you work with the wind in your tradition.
So the wind we call umoya, which also means the soul or the spirit. So the way we do it is when we're lighting a fire, we're lighting a special ceremonial fire, we'll be quiet in the beginning and we'll just watch the direction of the wind, and we'll watch how the smoke moves. And then we'll also bless ourselves with the smoke. But then the way we watch the wind is also in terms of the weather patterns. So often when we start a very powerful ancestral ceremony, when the day starts, it might be a clear day in terms of you see the sky is blue and there's not a drop of wind, everything's clear. And then when we start the prayers, you start to see a few clouds moving on, and then we'll see the rain clouds, and maybe we'll hear thunder. And then that's a sign for us that the ancestors have heard us, that the wisdom keepers of the world, of our humanity, have heard us. Because as we pray really strongly, and we pray from our hearts and from our pulse inside of us, then a wind picks up. And that wind, it's like what we call the vortex energy. That wind then connects with nature. So as we're praying, we send out this vibration, and then that turns into a physical wind, and that connects with the weather patterns. And as we see the weather coming in terms of a rain or a thunderstorm, it's a sign that the ancestors have heard us. So we will say, Siyavuma. Ancestors have heard us, and they've also agreed that they are going to support us for this ceremony, for this initiation work. So whenever we start praying in the beginning, like on a Friday before the ceremony starts, we'll always then look and see what is the reverb or what's the vibration from nature from our prayers. And we'll look at the birds, and we'll look at the weather patterns and how the birds are moving. And then we'll look at the clouds. So the wind is a big part of that.
Wow. When I was doing the research for Winds of Spirit, there was, when I got to Africa, there were so many wind gods and so many wind goddesses that part of how the book came about was that I was following the trail to where I could find the information. So today, for me, you're adding a whole new dimension to the wind work, because for a couple of years, I've been being shown that there's a spin axis. What you're talking about is the vortex. And I didn't exactly have the wording for it other than I called it a spin axis because I could see it, and we've started to work with it. And, we spin and unspin with it and connect. So this is like, I feel like I'm getting holiday presents here.
And in my book, Leopard Warrior, people can all have a look and see. I have a chapter in there, which I sent you, Renee, which is Ubuntu 101, which means humanity. And in there, I describe to people how to do a practice and how to connect with your ancestors and also the earth, and how this creates an alchemy in your spine and in your body. And one of the things people have to work on is this chaos energy, which is this vortex energy. So I always say to people when they start a ceremony with me, they need to watch the energy inside of them. They need to watch the wind inside of them, because sometimes that energy or that wind spins in a strong way because they're receiving a transmission. They're receiving energy from me, but from the energy that was transmitted to me from my teachers in South Africa. And that energy is the energy of transformation. And sometimes when people feel this in a ceremony, they feel this wind coming up, but they feel this chaos energy. And often it hits people on their emotional body first. So they might start feeling grumpy or sad or emotional or whatever. And sometimes people might think that that's a sign that it's the wrong ceremony or work for them. And it's actually the opposite. And I always have to start off now when I'm doing my ceremonies and work, I have to say, please, if you're feeling anxious, or you're feeling a kind of a strangeness on the wind inside of you emotionally, then that's a sign that the medicine is taking root inside of you. If you're feeling blissed out and happy and there's another kind of wind coming through, I'm going, wonderful. It's a sign the medicine is working. If you don't feel anything, then please come and speak to me afterwards. But people have never come to speak to me afterwards about not feeling anything, because this wind I call it the vortex energy of ignition, of igniting the Kundalini inside of you. And we speak about the Kundalini in South Africa as umbelini. Umbelini, where it gets connected to your umbilical cord, and there's the umbelini. So we'll say umbelini uphezulu, which means the umbelini, or the spirit inside of you, starting to rise up. And then the next we have to say, Njani Moya, how is the wind inside of you? How is your spirit? Because sometimes you might feel very grumpy or emotional, or just like the winds outside. And you have to be very, very careful not to react. So part of the training is being aware of what's going on inside of you when the prayers start and the ceremony starts, but then being very vigilant that you don't, let's say you get very angry because the energy comes up really strongly. We have to be very careful we don't react to that energy and lash out at someone, because it's not personal to someone else. It's this energy that's lifting up inside of you. And that's that energy which connects you to the world and to the universe.
Wow, I think I'm going to invite you back to maybe do a guest presentation for our apprenticeship program next year, where we start actually working with the wind as a tool for healing. Because, I thought I was writing another book. And then all of a sudden this book came, and it was like, who likes the wind? Everyone hates the wind. You want me to write a book about what? It was like, and so you're bringing it home in a really great way for me, especially, and I'm sure all of these people who have been, following this wind work, because I just say, I birthed this book, but these wind patterns have been here for, millions of years and billions of years, and that we forgot to listen to them. And it's time that we reconnect. And I keep believing that it's the wind that's going to take us back to nature now, that everything is created from the wind and everything returns to the wind. And so I'm getting chills as you talk, because it's like you're confirming for me what I didn't even know when I was writing the book. And I look forward to spending some more time with you. So how did you get initiated? How did you find this path as a white man in a traditionally Native indigenous culture? How did your two paths intersect?
Well, through my dreams, I had very profound dreams about becoming a Sangoma, and then I got what they call the calling illness, or called the Twaza, which is the calling illness to become a shaman. And that's documented all around the world with traditional shamans. But so what happened with me, when it actually started before I was born, and people can read about it in the book, but it started with my mother. Yeah, I just want to talk briefly about it because...
I want to hear about this.
So it started before I was born, which is quite magical. It started with my mother, and she's Irish and she's from Dublin. And so my mother had a vision when she was walking the Dunleary Pier, which is a very well-known pier in Dublin. And it was in the 1950s. And she had a vision where she saw African elephants. And when she came back from the walk next to the sea, she just knew instantly that she had to go to Africa. She said, while there were still wild elephants roaming free, she said. And it's very sad because of all the poaching now, but this was the 1950s. So she had a feeling that she wanted to go to Africa and see wild elephants while they are still roaming free. So she got a transfer from her job. She was working at that time in London. So she got a transfer to actually go to Zambia, and which was very unusual for a single woman in her late 20s, early 30s from Dublin going to Zambia, not as a teacher, not as a nun, but as an executive secretary. So she went to Zambia, and that's where she met my father, because my father comes from Rhodesia or Zimbabwe. And so she met him there, and the first thing they did was go into the wilderness and look at elephants. And then when I was born in Cape Town, just beneath Table Mountain, and I was born with this white clay around my eyes as I came out. And my mother thought that I looked like a little Aborigine, a little Australian Aborigine, because she had just lived there, and they were all painted in white. And the white doctor was shocked because it was apartheid, but all the nursing staff who were closer, they all ululated, And then a number of years later, when my mother met my teacher for the first time, Mam Gwevu, she came through the gate and she was dressed with a ceremonial white clay on the eyes. And then my mother remembered my birth. And then they sat down and my mom asked her, she said, what does the white clay mean? Because John was born with this white clay around his eyes. And my teacher was quiet and she said, I was as well. She said, all the traditional Sangomas who are born like this. She said, John is a traditional Sangoma like me. And that was a real moment between them, and they became very close from that point. And but my teacher, Mam Gwevu, she actually dreamt about me before I came to visit her. She had a dream that the Great Spirit came to her and told her that she was going to train and apprentice someone to become a senior Sangoma like her, and that she needed to prepare herself because this trainee was going to come from another culture. So the next day, when I came through her gate, she looked at me and she said I was the one that she had to train. And she didn't know how she's going to do it because I'm a white man and I don't speak Xhosa and she doesn't speak English. So when we sat down and she did her divination and she read my spirit and she saw my calling and she also saw this sickness that I had, which is, we call the Twaza, which is the Sangoma illness. And it's very, very extreme and you get very sick. And she could see how sick I was and she just felt all this compassion towards me. And she just said to me through my interpretive friend, she said, what took you so long to come to me? And I said, apartheid, Mum, apartheid. Because in apartheid, white people were not allowed to go into the townships, which is where the people were living, where the African people were living. We weren't allowed to go in unless you were military or police or priest. So I wasn't able to go in. So I had to wait for apartheid to finish in order for me to go in. So I battled with the Twaza illness for about 7 to 10 years. So she said, you have battled with this illness in the cold without any support. You will be my senior student. And she said, you almost died. You almost died. And she had a tear going down her face. It was very emotional. And then she just said to me, do you want to become a Sangoma? Do you want to become my apprentice? And I said, what does it mean to become a Sangoma? Because I didn't know. I wasn't educated with it. And she said, a Sangoma is a healer, and it's someone who's connected to the ancestral world. And when you connect to the ancestral world, you're going to be able to heal people in all different ways. And she said, and also your own sickness is going to be healed, and you're going to become much stronger, and you'll be a great trance dancer. So then I said to her, okay, I agree. And she said, okay, well, wonderful. Then tomorrow come back and I'll give you your first white beads. And it'll be a sign that you are my apprentice. And that's how it started. So I apprenticed with her for 10 years, and it was very beautiful and very difficult. And now a lot of my work is teaching people around the world about indigenous medicine, indigenous shamanism, and how to connect to the wind inside of them, how to connect to your dreams, how to connect with your ancestors, and how to connect to the earth. Because we're in such a difficult way right now, especially in Southern Africa, with a lot of animals being killed with poaching, the wilderness is shrinking all over the world at an alarming rate. And one of the reasons is because people have lost connection with the wind inside of them. They've lost connection with their spirit, but they've also lost connection with their humanity. They've lost connection with their ability to dream, to connect to the dream time. And as people do that, they turn into zombies, and they turn into these consumers that just want to eat and eat and eat the world. And there's many stories about this in different cultures, but as people disconnect from their humanity, they have this voracious appetite, because the appetite that's supposed to fill them is the appetite of the wind inside of them, of their soul. Once the wind inside of them is full, people don't want a lot. You just want food and drink and shelter and all the basic things of a normal creature. But the sign of this incredible consumerism is a sign of people losing connection with their humanity. So this is a huge part of my work, And all my practices are based on helping people to connect to the spirit, to the wind inside of them.
That's awesome. So we do very similar work. It's like such a refreshment to. It's like a glass of water to have this conversation with you, because that's kind of what I believe too. And it's just one of the things that has been most enjoyable about this particular holiday season for me is that it seems like the consumerism has decreased, that people are more interested in whether or not they can meet with 3 or 4 of their family members for the first time, instead of, these large, lavish parties where, everyone fills up the Christmas tree with lots of presents that mean very little, and that we're essentialing down. And in that essentialing down, we have the opportunity, like you say, to connect to the wind. One of the practices in Winds of Spirit is to take a wind walk. And, unbeknownst from what you're saying, it's you walk out the front door, you ask the wind a question, and then you wait till you get a little kiss on the cheek, or your wind flags move or something, so that you know that the wind is there listening, and then you just walk. It's a real kind of a mindfulness thing. So it sounds very similar, but in a very structured way, where you actually apprenticed with someone, they taught you all of this, and it came more as a download for me. But I'm sure you get it in your dream time too.
Yeah.
So it's very, very cool. So what else is in your book?
Well, a lot of the book is teaching, or is a teaching memoir. So it's talking about how I became a Sangoma, and then it's also talking about my background as an apprentice, a Zen student with a Zen master in South Korea, and how I was apprenticed with him. And then at the end, the Grand Master asked me if I wanted to become a Zen monk and join his monk army in South Korea. And there was quite an amazing moment there where I realized, it pushed me to the edge. After 3 months of retreating in a temple in South Korea in the winter, actually, it was my first snow. And in that moment, it became clear for me that I needed to go back to South Africa, vote for Nelson Mandela, and find a Sangoma teacher, or be open to finding a teacher. And I realized in that moment that I was destined to become an African monk as opposed to a strictly Zen monk in South Korea. So an African monk, or a traditional African monk, which is what I am, we chant and we sing, and that's how we connect with the spirit world. In a similar way to the Zen monks, a lot of them also have a practice of chanting. So that's where I started to learn to chant, was first with the Zen monks in South Korea, which is an amazing experience. Again, difficult, but part of any initiation is sacrifice, as we all know. And we have to feel we have to feel your bones, you have to feel your commitment to your spirit. So I talk about that in the book, and then I also talk about the process of me connecting to my bloodlines, to my ancestors, my Irish ancestors, my English ancestors, and also all the different ancestral lineages inside of me, so German, French, Scandinavian, how the dreams came to me and helped me to connect with my lineage. And then what I did was I pilgrimaged. So I traveled to different countries based on the dreams that I had. So I went to England and Ireland. I lived in Ireland for a number of years, and I went to Denmark. I went to Holland. I went to France. I went to all the countries where my blood was being shown, where my DNA, where my dreams were calling me, where my ancestors were calling me. And then when I went to these places, I made offerings. I went to holy and sacred places, and I made offerings. And then as I did that, I became stronger inside. So I speak about how the journey of becoming a traditional healer or a traditional shaman is the journey of marrying the ancestral songs inside of you. So that means that we say in South Africa, you need to know the songs of your ancestors. And sometimes it's not just literally the songs, like, the songs in Ireland and the rhythms. It's sometimes the voices, because each person's voice is a song. So sometimes it literally meant traveling to Denmark and Copenhagen, and hearing the sounds of the people speaking in Danish, because those sounds are connecting to my DNA and to my ancestry. And I had to go physically to these places to experience this. And then when I went back to South Africa to finish my apprenticeship after 10 years, I knew the songs of my ancestors because I had experienced it. And I was in a stronger place to become a traditional shaman.
That's awesome. I pilgrimaged too. It made me think about people and their lack of commitment. You know, one of the things that I see, and it's not a criticism, because maybe that was our journey to become who we are. And now, like, the people are not going to be able to travel across a lot of borders and things like that, because a lot of people think like, oh, life is going to get back to normal. Well, this is the normal. We've crossed that threshold. We're not like, this is the threshold, guys. And so I'm wondering what you think about that. Is like, I sat in a Lakota lodge for 10 years, and I went to Peru, and I had all of the initiations, and I did the work. And now I get a sense of a lot of times where I see people hopping from one teacher to the next if the flavor isn't suiting them, or gathering knowledge like a sponge. And do you think that that's a sign of the times, or do you think that we paved the road and now people can, pick fruit off the tree for how it serves them? What's your opinion about that?
Yeah, I think, it's a combination of things. I think we're living in such a multicultural world. However, these old ways of simplicity, these old ways of listening to the wind and feeling your spirit and your heartbeat, and walking outside and watching what direction is the wind moving in, these old ways are still with us. And if anything, we have to move in a simple way to calm our nervous system and calm our ways. And I think this massive, you could say, consumerism in the spiritual world is just an indication of the massive consumerism we have in the outer world. And so what I feel is this responsibility every time I teach now is to say that I'm not a lecturer. I'm a traditional ceremonial Sangoma, and my job is not to do it for you, but to help you find it inside yourself for you to walk with me. So if you want to do this work, then sit with me and I'll show you how to connect with the power inside of you, how to connect with the wind inside of you. But I can't do it for you. But I make a very important point now, and this is just after my time actually in the Kalahari this year. I did 3 retreats in the Kalahari desert just as the COVID virus broke in a strong way, and afterwards people couldn't travel. So we finished the last retreat in March. And afterwards, I felt the importance of changing the teaching slightly and actually saying that it's actually not about us as individuals anymore. It's actually about the world. So basically, there is a responsibility for each human being, not just leaders and not just politicians, but each human being. It's a responsibility for each person to connect with the wind inside of you, to connect with your spirit and with your soul, so that you are not a rampant consumer, because a rampant consumer is actually like a virus on this world, much worse than the coronavirus, much, much worse. And this is what's actually happening. People may have good intentions, but unless you are connected to your spirit inside of you, you are in danger of being a hungry ghost, which the Buddhists talk about, is this voracious appetite where people just eat and eat and eat. So whatever spiritual practice you do, I don't mind. I don't care. It's not up to me. It's up to you. If you're choosing a spiritual practice, then you do it 100% and you give of your heart and you devote yourself and you serve that practice, but you don't ask, what's in it for me? What am I going to get from this? If I'm going to do a ceremony with myself or with Renee or Sandra Ingerman or any teacher, don't ask yourself, what are you going to get from them? Ask, what can you give? What can I give of my heart to join Renee and join Sandra in ceremony so that this ceremony can be absolutely exquisite? So we talk in South Africa of Ubuntu, and I have it written in the book. Ubuntu means humanity, but it also means a circle. And it's saying the first connection to the circle of life is inside of you, and you have to make a decision to become a human being. So each person makes a decision to connect to their spirit, to connect to their soul and their wind. But that's a choice. Each person has a choice to connect to their humanity or not. However, because of the state of the world we're in, I say to clients and students, you have a choice to connect with your humanity, and it's painful because to become a human being, it means to feel. It means to feel the suffering of an insect, because we as human beings are empaths. We feel the world and we are custodians of the world. So Ubuntu is a circle, and it says, as we connect with our humanity, we also connect with our ancestors and other world. And then we connect to our community, and then you're holding hands. And as you connect with your community in the physical world and in the spiritual world, you also start to connect with the non-human world, with the wilderness. So you're creating this vibration, you're creating this wind of empathy. So a human being is an empath, is a custodian, is a creature that is the guardian of this world. That's the original default of the human being. And so when someone is sitting down to practice spiritually, this is what they should be asking themselves. How can I give of my spirit?
Exactly. And I have to take that a step further, because I just remember when I started, I was going to an AA 12-step group, and she's the person in the front said, the only reason I'm teaching you is, so that you can be of service to other people. And at the time I was in such pain. I'm thinking like, no, I'm here to get this other person sober. And if they would only be sober, I'd be okay. And I don't want to go give this away to anyone else. And it was like, that's how self-centered I was when I first began on this journey. And it turned into, now, how do I serve the wind? How do I show up? How do I hold a community when some years it feels like there's little in it for me? It's just like there was those, I was the hungry ghost for a long time until that attitude really shifted around. And now the community, like when we do this fire tending thing that we're in the middle of, like I feel held by the circle. And to me, it's like, I don't have to hold up the whole circle because you all have your candles and your flames lit. And so we're holding each other, and it's just such a better place to be.
So it sounds like what you're saying, that you have achieved Ubuntu, you have achieved humanity. And then once you recreated that, then the next thing is to keep going, So it's we are in a constant state of realizing our Ubuntu. So Nelson Mandela spoke about this. He spoke about Ubuntu, and he also demonstrated it very, very clearly. He demonstrated with every breath and every walk that he made. Ubuntu is a state of realizing your humanity, and you consistently keep doing it. So how are the vulnerable doing in our communities? How are the old people doing? How are the sick people doing? This is where our focus is. And if you, in a family where one of your parents is old and sick and struggling, straight away, that's where your teaching is, and that's where your practice is. And I've experienced this with my elders. They've been sick for years, quite a few of my closest Sangoma elders, and also elders in other Sangoma traditions. I used to sit with them, and then the next thing is I'd always go and run errands and buy food and get involved in ceremonies. And that's very much part of traditional shamanic apprentice, is not what you can get as a student. It's what you give to the elders to help them. And then they are so sweet and kind, because they can see this young one with them doesn't just want to take from them, but actually wants to sit and be with them and love them. It's all about love.
Absolutely. I brought refrigerators, and it was whatever the exchange was. They needed a refrigerator. I got the refrigerator. That type of thing. And that's kind of that Ainis kind of a little bit lost. But on your website, let's go over to your website and tell people, and then you'll finish with a chant after, or some. Will we?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about your website so people can find you. There is a donation link there too, so that goes back to the elders in your tribe. Is that?
Yes, I mean, I use it for my work, but I also use it a lot for for helping the underprivileged sangomas in my community. I've been doing that for many years. Yeah. So there's always a lot of projects, and it's either food or it's ceremonial help or medicine, taking my teacher and other teachers to the doctors, private doctors, to help them,
So his website is johnlockley.com, and that's LOCKLEY.com and JOHN. So you and this will be right in the link below in the comments here. And also, you can find him and go support his work. It looks like you do a lot of different things from Zoom sessions, mentoring program, plant healing, in-person divination, monthly webinars. Oh yeah, that was what he would like us to go sign up for, his monthly webinars. I'm certainly going to, because I want to learn about. I was like, I wanted to get back to the African winds. It was a call, and yet there were so many and not enough information from where I was doing my scholarly research to get it. But I have a feeling that you just opened up a doorway for me today, so I'm very excited.
Yes, and I just need to just let people know that I don't really work as a lecturer as such, so I don't really give a lot of information, but I do work with a practice, and the practice is the essence of what it is to be a Sangoma. So I work every monthly webinar is actually a monthly ceremony, and I do I start off with chanting and a guided meditation, and I was always finished like that as well. And the practice is about, I give a teaching, and then I ask people if they have any questions. And I'm really encouraging people to practice, because the more people practice in the world, the more we can all be human beings and achieve Ubuntu. I'm kind of careful about doing an anthropological discussion on various things that we do as Sangomas. I'm trying to be very careful about that. And the reason is because of cultural appropriation. My job is not to give out secrets about the Sangoma tradition. When I go home as a traditional Sangoma, I walk straight into it and I speak Xhosa, and that's my life. However, when I'm teaching the world and the public, my job is to help inspire people to practice in these old ways. So that's what these monthly webinars are. It's a different theme. So I talk about ancestors, I'll talk about dreams. At the moment, I'm finishing up a theme on the way of the warrior and how to connect with the warrior essence inside of you. And I'll often bring in stories of the wind, and I might give in a story about a teaching or what happened, or a Sangoma teaching, or a Zen teaching around the wind and the warrior. And so there's a lot of common themes from what you're doing, Renee.
Yeah, that's great. I'm looking forward to, and one thing I'll say is there's, in the last few years, when I was writing, I kept it really because the information was coming to me with the research, I really didn't broaden out, but I'm finding myself ready to broaden out a little bit. And so I'm going to come for sure to a couple of your monthly webinars for sure. In fact, your first one that I can see here is just he's doing something on New Year's Eve, or no, the night before New Year's Eve.
Not before, yeah. So it'll be 2 nights before. It's on the 30th, right. And that's the last of this series on the way of the warrior. And people can come in at any time. So even if it's the third one, don't worry, because they all have aspects where it's connected. And then, of course, people can also get the way of the leopard audio teachings, which is also connected, but it's a different product to the book. But it's a different teaching in the sense that where the book is talking about my memoir as a memoir, as a teaching memoir, the audio teachings is teaching. So it's teaching people how to connect with the leopard, with the instinctual side of themselves, with the wilderness inside of themselves. And I'll bring in that common element between us with the wind. I will say how the leopard feels the wind as a cat, and how they watch the wind, and how they let that move inside of them, and how they taste it. So the audio teachings is an addition to the book. It's a different product, but it's very helpful for people. And I really loved what Sounds True did with it, and I love Sounds True's work. So it's like a ceremony. That audio teaching is like a ceremony which you can bring home.
I love that. Sounds True seems to do some really great products.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've kind of come to the end of our time, which is only really the beginning of our time. I can tell you right now, I'm very excited that I got this opportunity to sit with you. You're going to lead us out with a chant, or?
Yes, I think the chant. I'll try a different chant now, and that's the Umoya chant, which is the wind chant. So I thought you'd like that.
Very nice.
Okay, so this chant is Moya, and it's about connecting with the wind inside of you and also connecting with your spirit, your soul. So if everyone wants to just sit up straight and feel your breath, and I'll bring in my bone whistle. Moya wamu, moya wamu, yo yo moya, moya, moya wamu, yo yo moya wamu, moya wam wam moya, moya wam wam moya. Moya wam wam moya, moya, moya moya, moya moya, 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 moya moya, moya moya, moya ya. Moya ya ya, hey abazali bamu, hey abazali bamu, hey abazali bamu, hey abazali bamu. Oh tiko koko, tiko koam, tiko koko, oh tiko koam, oh tiko. Tiko. Moya wam wam, moya wam wam, moya wam wam, moya wam wam, moya wam moya, 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 moya. Siyangula ngumoya, siyangula moya, siyangula moya wami, siyangula amanyange, siyangula Thixo. Now you watch the wind. You watch the wind inside of you, and you look outside, and you look at the wind moving through the trees. So right now, I'm watching the wind as it touches the leaves outside and makes it move. And I give thanks to the wind, for we are all connected. We are all one. The wind inside of you and the wind outside, as we say in Zen, are they the same or different? We leave that with you to answer.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us today, and we'll be over to your gatherings.
Thank you. Thank you, Renee.